Most people think land fails because it's overused, that the soil is tired, depleted, spent. But that's not the real reason land collapses. Land fails because we ask it to produce food before we repair it. Farmers understand this. Home gardeners usually don't. And that difference decides whether soil gets better every year or worse. What you're about to hear isn't trendy gardening advice. These aren't pretty plants you'll see on seed packets at garden centers. These are plants farmers quietly use before food crops go into the ground. Plants whose only job is to fix land that's already been damaged. Home gardeners ignore them because no one explains why they matter. So before we talk about planting tomatoes, lettuce, or anything else that feeds you above ground, we need to talk about what happens under the soil, where the real work is done. Healthy soil isn't dirt. It's alive. It breathes. It holds water. It hosts bacteria, fungi, insects, and roots working together like a system. When that system breaks, no amount of fertilizer truly fixes it. Fertilizer feeds plants, not soil. It's like giving sugar to a starving body. It creates activity, not health. That's why farmers think differently. They don't start with crops. They start with repair. The first plant on this list is one of the fastest land repair tools farmers use, and almost no home gardener knows why. At number 1 comes sun hemp, and its scientific name is Crotalaria juncea. Most people have never heard of it because you don't eat it, you don't harvest it, you don't sell it at a market. And that's exactly why it matters. Sun hemp exists for one purpose: to heal land that's been stripped of life. Farmers plant it when land is exhausted, after monocropping, erosion, or chemical overuse. Within weeks, sun hemp produces massive green growth above ground, but the real work happens below the surface. Its roots host nitrogen-fixing bacteria. That means instead of stealing nitrogen from the soil, it creates it. Not in a lab, not from a bag, naturally. As the plant grows, it shades the ground, protecting soil microbes from heat and drying out. Weeds struggle. Moisture stays locked in. Biology begins to return. Then comes the part gardeners find strange. Farmers don't harvest sun hemp. They cut it down. The entire plant becomes mulch. That green material feeds soil organisms, which convert it into stable organic matter. In under 3 months, dead land starts behaving like living soil again. Home gardeners ignore sun hemp because it doesn't look productive. There's no visible food, no harvest basket, no instant reward. But this is how land is prepared for decades of production, not one season. The second plant solves a different soil problem, one fertilizer can't touch. At number 2 comes buckwheat, scientific name Phagopyrum esculentum. Most people think buckwheat is just a grain. Farmers know it's a key. Many soils contain plenty of phosphorus, but it's locked away, chemically unavailable to plants. You can add more fertilizer, but the problem isn't shortage, it's access. Buckwheat fixes that. Its roots release natural acids that unlock bound minerals. Nutrients that were already in the soil suddenly become usable, not just for buckwheat, but for every crop planted afterward. Farmers use buckwheat between crop cycles or on weak ground where plants struggle. It grows fast, it flowers quickly, pollinators love it, and when it's cut down, the soil underneath behaves differently. Home gardeners ignore buckwheat because it isn't marketed as a solution. It's not labeled soil repair. It doesn't come with dramatic promises, but it quietly turns unavailable nutrition into usable fertility. That's not gardening, that's land management. At number 3 comes a plant that replaces machines. Daikon radish, scientific name Raphanus sativus var. Longipinnatus. Farmers call it tillage radish, not because it tills soil above ground, but because of what it does underground. Modern farming compresses soil, foot traffic, equipment, rain impact. Even repeated planting creates hard layers roots can't pass through. Water pools, oxygen disappears, roots suffocate. Daikon radish solves this without metal. Its root grows straight down, deep and thick, pushing through compacted layers like a drill. When winter kills the plant, that massive root decomposes, leaving behind vertical channels. Those channels become highways for water, air, microbes, and future roots. Farmers use daikon radish to restore drainage, prevent runoff, and eliminate the need for mechanical tilling. Home gardeners ignore it because it grows too big, too rough, too agricultural. But that ugliness is exactly what heals soil structure. By now, a pattern should be clear. These plants don't exist to look good. They exist to make land work again. And the next two plants take this even further, pulling nutrients from depths most crops never reach. That's where we'll continue next. So far, you've seen how some plants repair soil by adding nitrogen, unlocking minerals, or breaking compacted ground. But there's another problem that ruins land quietly, one most gardeners never notice until it's too late. That problem is shallow soil. Soil can look dark and healthy on the surface, but still be nutritionally empty just a few inches down. Years of shallow-rooted crops train the soil to function only at the top layer. Everything below that becomes unused, compacted, and biologically inactive. Farmers know this, and they use a plant most gardeners pull out as a weed. At number 4 comes chicory, scientific name Cichorium intybus. To most people, chicory is just a bitter green or a roadside weed, but farmers don't see the leaves first, they see the root. Chicory sends a deep, powerful taproot straight down into the soil, far deeper than most vegetables ever reach. That root doesn't just search for water, it mines minerals that have sunk out of reach over time. Calcium, potassium, trace elements, nutrients that rainfall and gravity have slowly pulled downward. When chicory grows, those minerals don't stay buried, they move upward through the plant. When leaves fall, when roots shed tissue, when the plant eventually dies back, those nutrients are deposited into the upper soil layers again. Farmers use chicory in pastures and rotation systems because it improves soil nutrition without adding anything artificial. Livestock graze it, microbes feed on it, soil structure improves naturally. Home gardeners ignore chicory because it's bitter, because it doesn't fit the idea of a neat garden bed, because it doesn't look productive in the way we've been trained to value. But bitterness isn't a flaw, it's a signal. It tells you the plant is rich in minerals. And those minerals didn't come from a bag, they came from the land itself, brought back to the surface by roots doing quiet work underground. By now, you may be noticing something important. None of these plants are about quick harvests. They are about preparing land so harvests can exist at all. The final plant on this list addresses a problem so serious that entire regions lose farmland because of it every year. Soil loss. Not nutrient loss, not fertility loss, actual soil disappearing. At number 5 comes vetiver grass, scientific name Chrysopogon zizanioides. Vetiver doesn't spread sideways. It doesn't invade beds. It doesn't compete the way grasses normally do. Instead, its roots grow straight down, sometimes more than 3 meters deep. Farmers use vetiver where land is literally washing away: slopes, field edges, erosion zones, flood-prone areas. Those deep roots act like underground anchors. They hold soil in place during heavy rain. They slow water runoff. They trap sediment instead of letting it disappear downstream. Above ground, vetiver looks simple, almost boring. Below ground, it's one of the most effective soil stabilization tools on Earth. Home gardeners rarely hear about vetiver because it isn't edible, it isn't decorative, and it doesn't fit into raised beds or tidy rows. But farmers don't ask whether a plant looks good, they ask whether land will still exist next season. And now comes the part that ties all 5 of these plants together. Farmers don't plant these because they want something to harvest, they plant them because food fails without foundation. Modern gardening culture skips this step. We go straight to crops, straight to yield, straight to results, and then we're confused when soil gets worse every year. These plants were never meant to be the stars of the garden. They're the workers, the rebuilders, the ones that show up before anything else can survive. That's also why they're ignored. You can't easily sell soil repair. You can't package patience. You can't market long-term thinking. But land remembers. If you repair it, it rewards you. If you ignore it, it collapses quietly. The difference between productive soil and exhausted soil isn't fertilizer. It's whether anyone took the time to heal it first. And once you see that, you start to understand why farmers rely on plants most gardeners never plant. By now, something should feel different about the way you look at plants. Not because these 5 are rare, not because they're secret, but because they reveal a truth most of us were never taught. Soil doesn't fail randomly. Land doesn't get tired. Land responds to how it's treated. Farmers learned this lesson the hard way. When yields dropped, when erosion started, when fertilizer stopped working the way it used to, they had a choice: add more inputs or fix the foundation. The plants you've just seen, sun hemp, buckwheat, daikon radish, chicory, vetiver, exist because someone, somewhere, had to repair land before anything else would grow. They're not fashionable. They don't photograph well. They don't promise instant results, but they work. And that's why they're used quietly, season after season, long before food crops ever go into the ground. Home gardeners were never taught this sequence. We were taught to plant first and fix later, to treat soil like a container instead of a living system, to measure success by harvest size, not soil health. That's not a mistake. It's a design choice. A system built around products will always focus on what can be sold each season: seeds, fertilizer, amendments, things that create visible action quickly. Soil repair doesn't fit that model. It takes time. It takes restraint. It takes understanding that not every plant exists to feed you directly. Some exist to make sure feeding yourself remains possible. And once you understand that, your entire approach changes. You stop asking, "What can I harvest this month?" and start asking, "What will my soil look like next year?" That shift alone separates struggling gardens from resilient ones. The plants farmers use to fix land aren't hidden because they're dangerous. They're hidden because they don't belong to a system that rewards speed over stability. But they're available, they're simple, and they still work exactly as they always have. If you've ever wondered why your soil seems to get worse no matter how much you add to it, the answer isn't more inputs. It's missing steps. And those steps begin with plants that don't demand anything, only time. If this way of thinking makes sense to you, if you care about growing food that doesn't destroy the ground it depends on, then you already understand what this channel is about. This isn't gardening advice. It's remembering how land was treated when people expected it to last. And that knowledge is still here, quietly waiting to be used again.